I can still hear her voice as if it is echoing against the walls of this house even now. My daughter Alina, standing in the living room with her fists clenched around her glowing phone, screamed at me as if I were the villain of her life. "You are nothing but chains, mother. You are the reason I cannot move forward." The words cut deeper than any blade ever could. For a long second, I could not move. I stood there by the kitchen doorway with a dish towel in my hand, my breath caught halfway between my chest and my throat. The air was heavy with silence, broken only by the dull thrum of rain outside. I had been yelled at before. Every parent gets shouted at when their child grows restless or angry. But this was different. This was not the frustration of a girl who had a bad day. This was rejection. A declaration that everything I had given, every sacrifice I had made, was suddenly worthless in her eyes. I wanted to ask her why. I wanted to ask her if she remembered the long nights when I carried her in my arms because she was too scared to sleep alone. I wanted to remind her how I took 2 jobs when her father left so she would never miss a birthday present, how I skipped dinners so she could eat. But I did not say any of that. When your own child looks at you with eyes that see you as nothing but an obstacle, words dry up like rivers in drought. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced at it with more warmth than she had shown me in weeks. Then she turned those cold eyes back to me. "I am done listening to you," she said, her voice sharp and final. "You do not understand success. You never have. You are stuck in a small life and you want me to rot here with you." I opened my mouth, but the sound that came out was not the lecture I thought I would give. It was something small, something ordinary. "Dinner is ready," I whispered. She laughed. Not with joy, not even with humor, but with a kind of cruelty that startled me. It was a sound I did not recognize. My little girl used to laugh with her whole body, clutching her stomach until tears rolled down her cheeks. But this laugh was different. It was hollow, cold. "Do you really think I care about your dinners?" she spat. "You think I care about sitting here in this sad house with your sad food and your sad life? You have nothing to teach me. You are holding me back." She shoved past me, perfume lingering in the air, and disappeared into her room. The door slammed so hard that one of the framed photos on the wall tilted sideways. I stared at that crooked picture for a long time, my body frozen, my heart aching in a way I did not know was possible. The plate of food sat untouched on the counter. Steam rose and then vanished, leaving it cold and unwanted, much like me. It would be simple to say that was the moment everything broke. But the truth is, the cracks had started months before. At first, it was little things. Alina used to help me fold laundry while talking about her day at college. Then one afternoon, she brushed past me with headphones in her ears, mumbling that she was busy. The next week she skipped dinner, saying she had a meeting online. Then came the nights when I heard her shouting through the walls, cheering along with some unseen crowd. I peeked into her room one night and saw the glow of her laptop screen. Dozens of faces on a video call, all chanting the same phrases about freedom, about money, about destiny. And there, at the center of it all, was a man I had never seen before. His name was Damien Cross. I only needed a minute of hearing his voice to know he was dangerous. He wore a tailored suit and a gold watch that glimmered under his bright studio lights. His words flowed like honey, smooth and sticky, coating every insecurity with promises of power. He told them families were traps. He told them that traditional jobs were slavery, that only the brave broke free. He told them parents were parasites, jealous of their children's success. I did not know it then, but that was the beginning of the end. Alina repeated his words like they were holy scripture. One night while washing dishes, I heard her say from her room, "Chores are minimum wage energy." Another time, she declared that if someone was not investing in her vision, they were dead weight. She said it with such conviction that for a second I almost believed she understood what she was talking about. When I tried to reason with her, she rolled her eyes as if I were a child. "You will not get it, Mom. You are trapped in a loser mindset." The words stung, but what hurt more was the way she believed them. She truly thought I had never done anything with my life. She had no memory of the sacrifices, the late nights, the tears I hid. Every day the distance between us grew. She stopped eating the meals I cooked. She stopped asking me about my day. She stopped smiling when I came home from work. Instead, she smiled at her phone at the voice of that man who told her she was destined for greatness. I tried everything. I printed out articles exposing Damien's scams, pointing out the fake testimonials and the countdown timers designed to create panic. I sat her down and begged her to look at the evidence. She laughed in my face. "You are jealous," she said. "You do not want me to succeed." I had never felt more invisible. By the time that night came, the night she called me chains, I realized something heartbreaking. She did not just believe in Damien's dream. She believed that I was the reason she could not reach it. I stood in the kitchen long after she stormed into her room. The rain outside had grown heavier, streaking the windows with silver lines. I touched the tilted photo on the wall and straightened it. It was a picture of us from years ago, her arms around my neck, both of us smiling at the camera with ice cream smeared on our lips. I pressed my fingers against the glass and wondered where that little girl had gone. The house felt too big without her laughter. The silence was unbearable. I turned off the light and went to bed, but sleep never came. And that was only the beginning. The next morning, the kitchen felt like a battlefield long after the war had ended. I made coffee, poured it into my old chipped mug, and sat at the table staring at the steam. Alina's door was still closed. I wondered if she had slept at all or if she had been up with her glowing screen, listening to that man. When she finally emerged, she did not even look at me. She grabbed her phone charger, her jacket, and a protein bar, and then she was gone. No good morning, no acknowledgement, just the sound of the front door shutting. I sat there alone with my cooling coffee and thought about the life I had built for her. I remembered the years of double shifts, of aching feet and tired eyes, of moments when I wanted to collapse but pushed forward because she needed me. I did it all to give her stability. And now that stability had become the cage she wanted to escape. I should not have been surprised. She was always chasing something brighter. When she was a child, she would reach for the shiniest toy in the store even if it broke after a week. Now, as a young woman, the shiny toy was Damien Cross. Days passed in a blur. She stopped coming home for dinner. She started talking about new friends who understood her hustle. I barely recognized her. One evening, I walked into her room to put away laundry and saw a whiteboard filled with Damien's phrases written in bold letters. Money is not real. Confidence is everything. Family is energy debt. I felt a shiver crawl down my spine. I asked her what it all meant. She snatched the board from my hands, furious that I had touched her things. "This is my blueprint," she snapped. "You would not understand." Her phone buzzed again and she smiled down at it as if the screen held the answer to her prayers. That night I could not help myself. While she was in the shower, I peeked at her laptop. The website she worshipped was a circus of lies. Stock photos, fake testimonials, countdown timers resetting every hour, promising wealth if you acted fast. I scrolled through and felt my stomach turn. It was textbook manipulation. When I confronted her with the truth, she laughed, actually laughed. "You are pathetic, Mom. You cannot stand that I am aiming higher than you ever did. You want me to stay small like you." I froze. Small. That was the word she chose for me. As if my entire life, my sacrifices, my love, had all been nothing more than proof of failure. I tried to swallow my anger. "Alina, please, you need to slow down. This man is using you." But she was already walking away. "You are jealous, that is all. I am building something you will never understand." She slammed her door and blasted music so loud the floor vibrated. I lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding with helpless rage. There is nothing worse than watching someone you love disappear into the arms of a stranger, especially when that stranger does not care about them at all. Weeks turned into months. The house grew colder. She stopped helping with chores entirely. She stayed in her room until late afternoon, then paced the floor all night shouting into her headset with other dreamers. Sometimes I heard them chanting together, their voices echoing like a cult. "Let's go. We are kings. We are queens. We are untouchable." I wanted to pull her back. I wanted to shake her and remind her of who she was. But every attempt only pushed her further away. She told me once, her eyes blazing with certainty, "You will be dead before the new economy comes, and I will not waste time carrying you." I remember standing there in the hallway, staring at her, realizing she truly believed it. She truly saw me not as her mother but as dead weight. The breaking point came one evening when I checked my bank account. A hole had opened in the numbers. Money was missing. At first, I thought it was a mistake, some clerical error. But the more I looked, the more I realized what had happened. She had used my saved details, my name, my life's work, and transferred thousands to a company I had never heard of. My hands shook as I walked to her room. She was sitting cross-legged on the bed, headphones on, eyes blazing with excitement as she typed furiously into her laptop. "Alina," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "We need to talk." She looked up at me with irritation, pulling one headphone aside. "What?" "There is money missing from my account," I said, my voice trembling. "Thousands, did you do this?" She did not even flinch, she smiled. "Oh, you saw that? Relax, it is an investment, you will get it back triple." My chest tightened. "That was my money, Alina, that was my name, do you have any idea what you have done?" She closed her laptop slowly and stood up. She was taller than me now, her chin tilted high, her eyes glowing with fanatic fire. You are holding me back. That money is going to change everything. I am not going to apologize for investing in my future. You stole from me, I whispered. No, she said, her voice rising. I liberated it. You are too scared to take risks. You are jealous of me. You want me to fail because you failed. And then she said it, the sentence that burned through my chest like acid. I wish you were gone. I wish you were out of my life forever. The room fell silent. I stared at her face, searching for the little girl I used to know. She was not there. All I saw was a stranger who believed her own lies. And in that silence, something inside me shifted. I did not shout. I did not cry. I simply smiled. It was not the smile of someone who had lost. It was the smile of someone who finally understood. She thought she had broken me. She had no idea that I was already strong enough to walk away. That night, I packed my bag. Not clothes, not keepsakes, just my purse, my phone, my keys. I left the laundry where it was, the groceries on the counter. I stepped outside, shut the door behind me, and for the first time in years, I felt light. The rain was still falling, but it no longer felt heavy. And that was how it began. The first night I spent away from the house, I could barely close my eyes. I stayed on a friend's couch, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me while questions crowded my mind. Where had I gone wrong? How did Alina fall so quickly under the spell of a stranger? I wanted to believe she would realize her mistake in a day or two and call me, apologizing with the voice of the little girl I used to know. But the silence from her end was complete. I checked her social media the next morning, something I promised myself I would not do. And there she was, smiling into the camera as if nothing had happened. Her caption read "Level Up Season. Cutting out toxic energy, even if it is family." My chest tightened. She had erased me with one sentence, and the world of strangers on her page applauded her for it. I scrolled through the comments. You are so strong, boss energy. Family will hold you back, keep going queen. Dozens of strangers were cheering her decision to cut me out of her life as if it were some kind of victory. My hands trembled as I closed the app. It felt like I had died, and yet the world kept spinning, celebrating my disappearance. Meanwhile, Damien's shadow stretched further across her days. I knew because every post, every video she made carried his words. His slogans were painted across her captions. His voice echoed in her tone. She spoke about vibrations and abundance and scarcity mindset as if she had discovered the language of the universe. But I knew better. I knew she was only repeating what he fed her, word for word. I began to study him in secret. I watched his videos, forcing myself to sit through every speech. He was clever, I will give him that. He never sold the product directly. He sold the dream first. He told them they were special, chosen, destined for greatness. He told them their parents did not understand because their parents were losers. He created an enemy out of the very people who loved them most. Then he offered the cure. Exclusive mentorships, private coaching, one-time deals that required instant payments. I wanted to scream at the screen. I wanted to shake him through the pixels and demand he give my daughter back. But all I could do was watch as he smiled with those perfect teeth and convinced thousands of kids like Alina to hand him their savings. Alina started small. $97 for a PDF that promised financial freedom, then $200 more for a video call where Damien looked her in the eyes and told her she had real queen energy. I could see it in her face afterward. She glowed as if he had knighted her. No compliment from me could ever compete with the validation he gave her in that moment. Soon she stopped coming home altogether. She moved into a cheap apartment with 2 other believers. I found out only because a neighbor texted me, asking if Alina was all right since she had not been seen in days. I drove by the building once and saw her through the window, pacing with her phone in hand, reciting Damien's words like prayers. She did not see me. I sat in the car, hidden in the shadows, watching my daughter become a stranger. The deeper she went, the more grand her stories became. She told her online followers she was building a business empire. She said she had clients waiting in line to pay her for access to her vision. She claimed she was only weeks away from flying to Dubai to meet investors, and people believed her. They cheered her on. They wanted to believe success could be that simple. I knew the truth. She had no clients, no empire, no investors. She had nothing but debts piling up behind the curtains she never showed on camera. I tried once more to reach her. I sent a message asking if she was eating well, if she needed anything. Hours passed with no reply. Then finally a short response came. Do not contact me again. You are toxic. You will never understand what I am building. I read those words again and again until the screen blurred through my tears. Toxic. She had absorbed that word from Damien just like every other phrase. She no longer spoke as Alina. She was his echo. The days bled together. I tried to rebuild my own life, but in the quiet moments my thoughts always drifted back to her. I wondered if she was safe. I wondered if she ate. I wondered if she remembered me at all. One night I got a call from the bank. They told me someone had attempted to connect new loan apps to my frozen account. My heart dropped. I knew it was her. I wanted to believe she was smarter than that, but desperation can make even the brightest child foolish. I tried to sleep that night, but dreams turned into nightmares. I saw her drowning in numbers, her hands clawing for the surface, while Damien stood on the shore smiling. When I woke, sweat soaked my sheets. The fear would not leave me. I went online again against my better judgment. And there she was, posting a new video. She was sitting on a rented sports car, sunglasses on, her hair styled like a model. She smiled wide and declared, "This is only the beginning. If you are not investing in yourself, you are wasting your life." The comments poured in. "Yes, Queen, inspire us, take us with you." But I looked closer at the background. The car was parked in front of a pawn shop. She thought she was fooling the world. But to me, she looked like a girl playing dress-up in someone else's life. Weeks passed, and Alina's online persona grew louder while her real life grew emptier. I saw it in the details most people missed. The bright lights of her videos could not hide the stack of unopened mail in the corner. The motivational slogans on her wall could not drown out the thinness of her frame, the hollows beneath her eyes. She was starving in every sense of the word. She introduced someone new in her videos, a young man named Lucas. He was 21, careless in his charm, the kind of boy who looked good in pictures but had no idea how to hold on to responsibility. Together, they branded themselves as a power couple. She sat on his lap in their clips while he flashed fake cash at the camera. They called themselves unstoppable. I watched from the sidelines, heartbroken. It felt like staring at a stage play where my daughter had taken the role of a character who was doomed from the very first act. One night, a neighbor from her building sent me a message. She had heard shouting, Alina's voice echoing down the hallway, full of rage. Something about rent, about money, about promises that were never kept. I did not need more details. I knew exactly what was happening. Damien had dangled another bait in front of her, a new partnership opportunity. All she had to do was show she had $10,000 in liquidity. He promised this was the final step before joining his inner circle. I could almost hear his voice through her lips, convincing her that greatness was one payment away. I wanted to drive to her apartment, to beg her not to send the money. But I knew how she would react. She would call me toxic again. She would call me jealous. She would shut the door in my face. So I stayed where I was, helpless, waiting for the inevitable crash. It came sooner than I expected. Alina posted a video the next morning, standing in the kitchen I once cooked in, holding a mug that read Boss Energy. Her smile was wide, almost manic, as she declared to her small audience, "Cutting out negativity is the key to leveling up, even if that negativity gave birth to you." I stared at the screen, numb. She had erased me again, this time with a smile. Meanwhile, my own life, fragile as it felt, began to find its footing again. I got a job as an HR assistant at a private firm. The first day I walked into that office, nervous but determined, I felt like I was stepping into sunlight after years underground. My coworkers welcomed me. They asked about my experience. They treated me like I mattered. For the first time in years, I felt seen. But every evening after work, I checked Alina's pages. It was a habit I could not break, and each time I saw her slipping further. The cracks began to show. Lucas stopped reposting her videos. Sometimes I caught a glimpse of his arm pulling away when she tried to hold his hand on camera. She covered it with a laugh, but I knew what it meant. Her comments started to shift too. People asked, "Where is the money at?" Some laughed at her promises. The applause was fading. Then one day she disappeared from the streams for 48 hours. That had never happened before. She lived for those streams. She breathed them. I knew something had gone wrong. When she finally reappeared, her smile was forced. She claimed she was working on something bigger, something that would blow everyone away. But her eyes betrayed her. They darted nervously, her laugh cracked in the middle. She looked less like a queen and more like a girl cornered by her own lies. The truth came out later. She had wired the last of her borrowed money to Damien's so-called partnership. And by the time the clock struck 9 the next morning, the man was gone. His Discord server vanished. His Telegram chat wiped. His YouTube channel deleted. His Instagram wiped clean. It was as if he had never existed at all. I was not there to see her reaction, but I can imagine it, the frantic refreshing of her inbox. The disbelief that silence could be so loud. The dawning horror as she realized she had been scammed from the very beginning. I imagine Lucas standing in the doorway, arms crossed, watching her world collapse. I imagined the moment he picked up his things and walked out, leaving her alone with bills taped to the wall and no one left to cheer her on. I was not there, but I felt it in my bones, because that was the night I dreamed of her again. In the dream, she was pounding on a locked door, her voice hoarse from shouting, while Damien's laughter echoed from somewhere unseen. And when she turned around, her face was pale, her eyes wide with the realization that no one was coming to save her. I woke with tears on my cheeks. In that moment, lying in my small rented room with the city humming outside, I understood something painful but true. I could not save Alina from herself. She would have to reach the bottom of the pit before she would look up and see the hand that had always been there. And so I waited. I had always known that trust between a mother and a daughter was fragile, but I never realized how quickly it could be shattered. The call from my bank came on a Tuesday morning. I had just finished sorting paperwork at my new job when the number flashed on my phone. The woman on the other end explained calmly that my account had shown unusual activity. Thousands of dollars had been transferred to an unfamiliar company. My blood turned cold. I asked her to repeat the name. It was one of those vague corporate titles that meant nothing, just a shell. But deep down, I already knew who had pressed the button. I left the office early that day. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. All the years of sacrifice, all the hours of extra shifts, every dollar I had scraped together was vanishing into the pockets of a stranger because my own daughter believed his lies. When I pushed open the door of her apartment, the smell hit me first. Cheap perfume mixed with instant noodles and stale energy drinks. Alina was perched on the couch with her laptop, her eyes wide with excitement as if she had just been handed a golden key. "Alina," I said, my voice shaking. "What did you do?" She barely looked up. "What are you talking about?" "You took money from my account," I said. "Thousands, do you even understand what that means?" Finally, she closed the laptop and turned to me. Her face was calm in a way that terrified me. "It is an investment, Mom. You will thank me later." My knees nearly gave out. "That was my money, my name, you have stolen from me." She stood, her chin tilted upward, her posture stiff with pride. "I did not steal. I liberated it." "You are too scared to take risks. You are stuck in the past. I am building the future." The room spun around me. This was not my daughter speaking. This was Damien's voice echoing through her mouth. "Alina, please," I begged. "This is not who you are." Her eyes narrowed. "This is exactly who I am, and you cannot stop me." I felt something snap inside me. The fear that had been building for months turned into anger. "You are being scammed. You are throwing your life away. Do you think this man cares about you? He will disappear the moment you have nothing left to give." She laughed then, a harsh sound that echoed against the walls. "You are pathetic. You have always been pathetic. You worked yourself to the bone for scraps. And now you are jealous because I am not going to end up like you." Her words cut into me like glass. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her and shake her until the truth rattled through her skull. But instead I stood still, frozen in disbelief, as she leaned closer and hissed the final sentence that would echo in my ears forever. "I wish you were gone. I wish you were dead." Silence swallowed the room. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my chest. I stared at her, searching her face for the little girl I had raised. She was gone. All I saw was a stranger drunk on false promises. And then something unexpected happened. I smiled, not because I found it funny, not because I had lost my mind. I smiled because in that moment I finally understood. I had been fighting a battle I could not win. She did not want saving. Not yet. She wanted to believe the lie. And if that meant cutting me out of her life, then so be it. I picked up my bag. I did not pack clothes. I did not pack memories. Just my purse, my phone, my keys. I left everything else where it was. The groceries on the counter, the laundry in the basket, the photos on the wall, they were no longer mine to hold. She watched me from the hallway, her face twisted with triumph as if she had finally won something. She thought I was walking away because I was weak. But the truth was the opposite. I was walking away because I was strong enough to let her fail. The door closed behind me with a soft click. For the first time in years, I felt light. That smile stayed on my lips as I stepped into the night. She never understood that it was not a smile of defeat. It was a smile of freedom. When I left her apartment that night, the city air felt sharper than usual. I walked slowly, each step heavy but steady, as though I had been carrying a mountain on my back and finally decided to set it down. For years, I had told myself that protecting Alina meant shielding her from pain. But I realized in that moment that some lessons could only be learned by walking straight into the fire. I spent the next weeks rebuilding pieces of my own life. My job at the firm became my anchor. The office smelled of fresh coffee and paper. the sound of printers and laughter replacing the silence that had haunted my home. My coworkers treated me with respect. They asked about my weekend. They noticed when I wore a new scarf. It was nothing extraordinary, but it reminded me that I existed outside of her world. I was more than just a mother being torn apart. Yet at night, when I sat alone in my small rented room, I could not help thinking about Alina. I wondered if she remembered the look on my face when she told me to disappear. I wondered if she replayed those words or if they had slipped away like dust. I told myself not to check her pages again, but temptation always won. Every time I opened her profile, my stomach twisted. There she was, smiling wide for her audience, posting clips of herself and Luca's as if they were royalty. She called herself CEO. She declared that people who doubted her were nothing but haters. Her captions read like sermons, filled with Damien's words. One night she went live. I watched, hidden behind a screen name she did not know. She spoke about loyalty and how she had cut off toxic energy, how she had finally rid herself of people who wanted to hold her back. Then she laughed, and the sound made my skin crawl. It was a laugh meant for me. Behind her, taped to the wall, I saw something that broke my heart further, a red eviction notice. She had not even bothered to hide it. It clung to the wall like a scar, visible for a split second before she adjusted the camera angle. I closed my laptop, my chest tight. A few days later, a neighbor messaged me again. She said she heard shouting, Alina screaming about lies and rent and promises. I thanked her but asked for no more details. I did not need them. I knew the storm was coming. It happened one morning not long after. Alina had wired the last of her borrowed money to Damien's so-called partnership. She waited for an email that never arrived. At 9, silence. At 10, still nothing. By noon, Damien's accounts had vanished. His channels wiped clean, his voice gone as if it had never existed. I imagine Alina sitting at that kitchen table, refreshing her inbox until her fingers cramped. I imagine her face when Lucas packed his things and walked out. I imagine the silence afterward, thick and unbearable. I did not rush to her side. Not this time. Because the truth is, her betrayal had not ended the night she stole from me. The real betrayal was how she looked at me, her own mother, and saw nothing but a chain. That wound cut deeper than the money ever could, so I stayed away. One evening after work, I sat with my new colleagues at a small Italian restaurant. The table was warm with conversation, the clink of glasses and forks filling the air. Someone asked about my daughter. I smiled faintly and said she was chasing big dreams. I did not mention the scam, the lies, the shouting. I did not say she had told me to die. Some truths were too heavy for strangers to carry. Later that night, alone again, I thought about the smile I gave her before I walked out. That quiet smile had been the first step of my freedom. But it was also something else. It was a warning. A seed planted for the day she would come back, broken and desperate, looking for a door to open. She had no idea that I had already been preparing for that moment. She thought she was winning. She thought I was gone for good. But the truth was, I had finally learned how to live without her. And that was the betrayal she never saw coming. The day I truly realized how far Alina had fallen was not when she told me to leave, and not even when she stole my money. It came later, in the quiet unraveling of her perfect image. I had been living away from her for months now. My small rented room had become a place of fragile peace. The job at the firm gave me routine, and the colleagues who smiled at me each morning reminded me that I still belonged somewhere in this world. But no matter how much I tried to move forward, I could not escape her shadow. I told myself to stop checking her pages, to stop feeding the ache with images of her false empire. But temptation was stronger than resolve. One evening, after work, I sat at my desk and opened her profile. What I saw was both familiar and strange. Alina was streaming again, her hair carefully styled, her voice full of forced energy. She sat in front of the same whiteboard of slogans, though now the edges were curling, the ink fading. She told her audience that success was around the corner, that they only had to trust the process. Her smile was wide, but her eyes darted left and right as if she were searching for something she could not find. The comments were different this time, too. Fewer hearts, more questions. People asked about returns on investments. Someone wrote, "You promised results last month." Another typed, "Is this just another scam?" She tried to laugh them off, but her laugh cracked in the middle. For the first time, I saw the mask slipping. I leaned closer to the screen, studying every detail. Her shoulders looked thinner. Her skin was pale beneath the makeup. She tried to project abundance, but the room behind her told a different story. Dishes piled in the sink, laundry scattered on the floor, blinds half broken. It looked less like the home of a queen and more like a cage. I wanted to reach through the screen, to hold her face in my hands and remind her that she was still my child. But I could not. All I could do was watch. Not long after, Lucas disappeared from her videos entirely. At first she claimed he was busy with side projects. Then she stopped mentioning him at all. I knew what it meant. The power couple had broken. She was alone now. Another week passed and I received a text from one of her old friends. They asked if Alina was all right because she had been calling late at night, crying about debts and betrayal. I froze with the phone in my hand. My first instinct was to run to her, but I stopped myself. This was not my battle anymore. She had chosen her path and she had to face it. Still, that night I dreamed of her again. She was standing in front of a cracked mirror, her reflection splintered into a dozen pieces. Each fragment showed a different Alina. One was smiling, one was crying, one was screaming. In the dream, she reached out to touch the glass and every piece shattered. I woke with my heart racing, sweat dampening my pillow. The next morning at work, I found myself distracted, unable to focus on numbers or forms. My boss noticed and asked if I was all right. I lied and said I had not slept well. The truth was that I was haunted, pulled back into the storm I thought I had escaped. That evening, unable to resist, I went to her building. I parked down the street, far enough to stay hidden but close enough to see the windows. Most of them were dark except one. Through the thin curtain, I saw her silhouette pacing back and forth. She stopped occasionally to sit, then jumped up again as if burned by her own thoughts. I sat in the car for an hour, gripping the steering wheel, torn between the urge to go inside and the fear of being rejected once more. In the end, I did nothing. I drove home in silence, the image of her restless shadow burned into my mind. The cracks in her mirror were widening, I could feel it, and soon something would break. It was a Friday night when the first real crack split wide open. I was finishing dinner alone when my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. For a second I thought about ignoring it, but something inside told me to answer. The voice on the other end was shaky. It was Alina. She did not say my name, not at first. There was just the sound of her breathing, quick and uneven. I stayed silent, afraid that if I spoke she would hang up. Finally she whispered, "Mom." The word nearly undid me. For months she had erased me from her life, replaced me with slogans and strangers. Hearing her call me Mom again was like water to a desert. But before I could respond, her tone shifted. "I need money." The old ache returned instantly. "Alina, I am serious," she interrupted. "If I do not get 5,000 by tomorrow, I am finished. They will throw me out. I will lose everything." I closed my eyes, the phone pressed tight against my ear, the silence stretched between us. She must have mistaken it for hesitation because her voice grew sharper. "Do not act like you do not have it. You work, you save, you can do this for me, you owe me that much." Her words stung. Owe her. I had given her everything, every ounce of strength I had, every dollar I could spare, every dream I ever had for myself. And still it was not enough. "Alina," I said softly, "you stole from me, you left me with nothing, I cannot give you more." Her breath caught. For a moment I thought she might apologize, that the little girl inside her might resurface. Instead she exploded. "You are useless. You were always useless. No wonder Dad left. No wonder you are alone." The line went dead. I sat there for a long time, staring at the blank screen. Her cruelty should not have surprised me, but it still tore into me like claws. That night I cried harder than I had in years, not just because of her words, but because I knew where they came from. Damien's poison had seeped so deep into her veins that she could not distinguish her own thoughts from his. She was a mirror cracked in so many places that she no longer reflected herself. The next day I forced myself to stay busy. Work, groceries, laundry, anything to keep my mind from drifting back to her. But in the quiet moments my heart betrayed me. I wondered if she had eaten, if she had found somewhere safe to sleep. I hated myself for caring after everything she had said, but love is not something you can switch off. A week later, news spread online. Damien Cross was gone. His websites vanished overnight. His accounts deleted, his channels wiped clean. It was as if he had never existed. I imagined Alina's face when she realized it. The panic, the disbelief, the crushing silence when she finally saw the truth. Part of me wanted to run to her, to hold her while she broke. Another part whispered that she needed this. She needed to see the mirror shatter completely before she could begin to rebuild. Still, I could not sleep. I dreamed of her again, this time sitting in the middle of a dark room surrounded by shards of glass. Each piece showed her reflection, but none of them were whole. She was bleeding from her hands as she tried to piece them back together. And in the shadows, I saw Damien's silhouette, smiling as he faded away. I woke gasping, tears streaming down my face. The next morning, as I walked to work, I caught my reflection in a shop window. My hair was thinner than it used to be, my eyes lined with exhaustion. But there was something else there too. A quiet strength. A resilience I had not seen in myself for years. I realized then that Alina was not the only one staring at a broken mirror. I was too. The difference was, I was ready to face mine. She would have to face hers alone. The silence after Damien's disappearance was louder than any of his speeches. His face, his voice, his promises all evaporated into thin air, leaving nothing but the sound of his victims scrambling through the wreckage. And in that silence, Alina finally cracked. It began with a message. Not a call, not even a proper sentence. Just 3 words on my screen late at night. I messed up. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at those words, my hands trembling. For a moment I thought it was a trick, another attempt to guilt me into sending money. But then another message came. He is gone. Everything is gone. My heart clenched. I could almost hear her voice breaking between the lines. I typed slowly, carefully. Where are you? No answer. The next day I forced myself through work with a knot in my stomach. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was her, but nothing came. After hours of silence, I decided I could not sit still any longer. I drove to her building. The hallway smelled of dust and stale cigarettes. I knocked softly on her door. No response. I knocked again, louder. Finally, the door creaked open. Alina stood there, or rather, what was left of her. Her hair was tangled, her skin pale, her eyes ringed with dark shadows. She looked at me not with anger this time, but with something worse. Defeat. Mom, she whispered, her voice hoarse. I stepped inside. The apartment was almost bare. The dishes were stacked high in the sink, clothes littered the floor, but the energy was gone. The whiteboard of slogans leaned in the corner, words half erased, as if even the ink had given up. She sank onto the couch, clutching a blanket around her shoulders. He took everything. The money, the group, the connections, all of it. He just vanished. I sat across from her, my hands folded tightly in my lap to keep from reaching out. Part of me wanted to hold her, but another part knew she had not earned that comfort yet. Alina, I said gently, I warned you. Her eyes flashed with pain. I know, I did not listen. I thought I was different. I thought he actually cared about me. Her voice broke, and for the first time in months, I saw my daughter's tears. They carved paths down her cheeks, washing away layers of arrogance and pride. I lost Lucas, she said through sobs. He left as soon as the money was gone. He said I was a fool. I stayed quiet, letting her words spill. I do not know what to do, she whispered. I cannot pay rent. I cannot even afford food. I thought I was building an empire, but it was all smoke, and now I have nothing. Her shoulders shook. I wanted to say that she still had me. That no matter what she had said, no matter how deeply she had wounded me, I was still her mother. But something inside stopped me. Love does not erase consequences. She needed to sit in the ashes before she could rebuild. So instead I said, you are alive, that is something, you still have a chance to start over. Her eyes searched mine, desperate. Do you hate me? The question pierced me. I took a long breath. I hate what you did. I hate the things you said, but I do not hate you. You are my daughter. That will never change. She cried harder then, burying her face in her hands. The rest of the night passed in a haze. I sat with her while she cried, offering no solutions, no money, just silence. When dawn came, I stood to leave. Are you going? She asked, her voice small. Yes, I said softly. I have to work. Will you come back? I looked at her. This broken girl on the couch was not the Alina who had called me chains and wished me gone. But she was also not the little girl who once clung to my neck. She was someone in between, someone I did not fully recognize. I will think about it, I said, and I walked out. The sun was rising as I stepped onto the street. For the first time in months, I felt the faintest spark of hope. Because maybe, just maybe, the breaking point was also the beginning. In the days after that night, I carried Alina's broken image in my mind like a stone in my chest. At work I filed papers and attended meetings, but every quiet moment dragged me back to the memory of her sunken eyes and trembling hands. Part of me wanted to rush back, to bring groceries, to clean her apartment, to do all the things I used to do when she was a child. But another part of me held back. I remembered the venom in her voice when she called me toxic. I remembered the theft, the lies, the way she said she wished I was gone. Love can forgive, but wounds do not heal overnight. She texted once more a few days later. Can we talk? I hesitated before answering. My fingers hovered over the screen, torn between yes and no. Finally, I typed, I am working late this week. We will see. It was the truth, but it was also a shield. I was not ready to dive back into her storm. That night, I dreamed again. This time, Alina stood in a burned field, ashes drifting around her like snow. She held a single seed in her palm, staring at it as if unsure what to do. Behind her, Damien's shadow loomed, laughing as the ashes blew away. She turned toward me in the dream, her face streaked with soot, and whispered, "Do I still deserve a garden?" I woke with tears wetting my pillow. The following weekend, against my better judgment, I went back to her building. The hallway was darker than before, the buzzing light above her door flickering on and off. When she opened the door, I saw faint improvement. The dishes were still piled high, but she had at least gathered the laundry into bags. She looked tired, but there was a quietness in her eyes instead of fire. "Hi, Mom," she said softly. I nodded, stepping inside. We sat at the table with cups of instant coffee between us. The silence stretched long before she finally spoke. "I do not know how to fix this," she whispered. "I do not know how to start over." I studied her. For the first time, there was no arrogance, no slogans, no borrowed words, just raw fear. "You start small," I said. "You find work, you pay your bills. You take it one day at a time." She looked at me, eyes wide. "Like you did?" The question caught me off guard. No mockery, no judgment, just curiosity. "Yes," I said, "like I did." She nodded slowly, tears welling. "I thought I was better than you. Damien made me believe that. He made me think love was weakness. That family was a chain. I repeated everything he said because I wanted to be somebody." Her voice cracked. "But all I am is lost." I reached across the table then, my hand resting over hers. She flinched at first, then gripped my fingers like a lifeline. "You are not lost," I told her. "You are just hurt, and hurt can heal." We sat like that for a long time. She spoke of debts she could not pay, of friends who had vanished the moment the money dried up. She confessed to sleepless nights, to panic attacks, to the fear that she had destroyed her life before it even began. Every word was heavy, but every word was hers. Not Damien's, not anyone else, just hers. When I finally stood to leave, she clung to my hand. "Will you come back?" This time I said yes. Walking down the hallway, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the first fragile thread of reconnection. Later, lying in my own bed, I thought about the strange symmetry of it all. She had broken me, and now she was broken. We were two fractured mirrors facing each other, each reflecting pieces of pain and love. The breaking point was brutal, but perhaps it was also the doorway, because sometimes you have to shatter before you can be rebuilt. And maybe, just maybe, this was where our story began again. Alina did not change overnight. No one does. After our fragile reconnection, I saw her more often, but each visit was a reminder of how deep the damage ran. She tried to smile when I brought groceries, but her smile was thin, brittle, as if it might crack with the slightest pressure. The apartment was still a mess, though less chaotic than before. There were days she left the dishes to rot in the sink, then days she scrubbed the counters until her fingers were raw. I recognized the pattern. She was swinging between despair and desperate attempts at control. Sometimes she tried to joke, but the laughter never reached her eyes. Sometimes she sat in silence, staring at her phone as though expecting Damien to reappear and tell her it had all been a test. I think part of her still believed he would come back, that the man who stole her money and her confidence might return and crown her queen again. I wanted to shake that hope out of her, but I knew better. You cannot force someone to let go of the poison they once called medicine. They have to reach that point themselves. Instead, I chose patience. We began to share small routines. I visited on Saturdays with groceries. She made coffee, weak and bitter, but it was a ritual. We sat at the table, sometimes talking, sometimes just breathing the same air. She asked about my work, I asked about her sleep. Slowly, cautiously, the walls began to lower. One evening, she surprised me. "Do you remember when I was 10 and I wanted to be an astronaut?" I smiled. "You covered your ceiling with glow-in-the-dark stars. You said you were going to live on the moon." She laughed softly, and for a brief moment the sound reminded me of the little girl I had lost. Her laughter faded into quiet. What happened to me? The question was not rhetorical. She was asking me, her mother, to answer. I thought carefully. You were hurt. You were promised the world and handed lies. You wanted so badly to be somebody that you forgot you already were. She blinked, tears brimming. Those tears did not erase the things she had done. They did not erase the theft or the cruelty. But they were a beginning. In the weeks that followed, she tried to find work. Most places turned her away. She had no references, no stable record, and debt collectors were circling. I offered to help with her resume, and she accepted reluctantly. Watching her swallow, her pride was painful and hopeful all at once. But progress was fragile. There were nights she relapsed into her old patterns, staying awake until dawn scrolling through motivational videos from other self-proclaimed gurus. She confessed once that she still wanted the shortcut, the instant empire. "Working in a cafe or an office feels like giving up," she admitted. "It is not giving up," I told her. "It is starting over. It is learning how to stand on real ground instead of air." She nodded, but I could see the longing in her eyes. The dream still called to her, even as it bled her dry. One evening, as I was leaving, she hugged me suddenly. Her arms were thin, almost fragile, but the grip was fierce. "I am sorry," she whispered. My throat tightened. "For what?" "For everything," she said. "For the words, for the money, for pushing you away." I held her tightly, feeling both the weight of her apology and the fragility of it. Forgiveness is not a switch you can flip. It is a long road, uneven and full of shadows. But that night, as I walked to my car with tears in my eyes, I realized I had taken my first step down that road. And maybe, just maybe, so had she. The more time I spent with Alina, the more I realized that rebuilding trust was not about grand gestures. It was about the small, ordinary things. One Saturday afternoon, I found her trying to cook. The smell of burnt rice filled the apartment and smoke curled up toward the ceiling. She stood there with a spatula in her hand, looking lost. When she saw me, she gave a half smile. "Guess I am not cut out for this." I took the pan from her gently. "No one gets it right the first time. Sit down, I will show you." We cooked together that day. Something simple, just rice and vegetables, but it felt like more than food. It was a moment of grounding, of teaching her again the basics she had dismissed as meaningless. She ate quietly, and for once there was no phone in her hand, no camera recording a false version of her life. Just us, mother and daughter, sharing a meal. Later that evening, she asked me, "Do you think people can change?" I hesitated. The easy answer would have been yes, but I owed her honesty. "People can choose to change," I said. "But it is hard, it is slow, and sometimes the past will always leave scars." She nodded, staring into her bowl. "I do not want to be who I was." The words hung in the air, fragile but real. Not long after, she managed to get a job at a small bakery down the street. It was nothing glamorous. Minimum wage, early mornings, sore feet, but it was honest work. The first time she told me about it, her tone was defensive, as if daring me to laugh. I did not laugh. I smiled and said, "I am proud of you." Her eyes softened, and I knew those words mattered more than she would admit. Still, the road was rocky. There were days she complained bitterly, saying she felt invisible behind the counter. There were nights she came home exhausted and snapped at me, old habits resurfacing like ghosts. But there was also progress. Each paycheck was a brick in a foundation she had never built before. I noticed she began deleting old posts from her pages. The whiteboard came down from the wall. Slowly, the slogans vanished from her vocabulary. In their place were quieter words: tired, sore, proud. One evening, she pulled out a box from under her bed. Inside were old photos, drawings she made as a child, even a few of her school essays. She spread them across the floor like a mosaic of her younger self. "I forgot who I was," she whispered. We sat together, flipping through the pieces of her past. There was the picture of her in a cardboard astronaut helmet, grinning with missing teeth. There was the essay where she wrote that her hero was me. My chest tightened as I read her childish scrawl. "My mom is the strongest person in the world." She looked at me with wet eyes. I used to believe that. I reached over and touched her hand. "You were right." Her tears fell then, silent and heavy. That night, as I left, I felt something shift. The ashes were still there, thick and suffocating, but among them I saw sparks. Tiny embers of the girl I once knew. And I realized something important. Alina was not the only one rising from the ashes. So was I, because through all the pain, through betrayal and heartbreak, I had discovered a strength I never knew I carried. And as I walked into the cool night air, I held on to that truth. The fire had nearly destroyed us, but perhaps, just perhaps, it had also given us the chance to begin again. I once believed that hitting rock bottom was the end of a story, but I was wrong. Rock bottom is only the place where choices become sharper, where you can either claw your way back into the light or sink deeper into the shadows. For a while, I thought Alina was climbing. She had her bakery job. She was paying small portions of her debt. She deleted most of her old videos, embarrassed by the persona she had built. When I visited, she sometimes even laughed, a sound that made my heart ache with cautious hope. But then came the day she told me she had been contacted again. We were sitting in her apartment, drinking tea. She looked nervous, chewing the inside of her cheek. "Someone reached out to me online," she said quietly. "They said they knew Damien. They said they could help me get my money back." My stomach dropped. "Alina, no," she looked at me, desperate. "What if they are telling the truth? What if I can recover what I lost?" "They are not," I said firmly. "It is another scam. This is how they work. They prey on people who are already hurt. You cannot go down that road again." Her hands trembled around her cup. "But I want to fix it. I want to undo what I did." I reached across the table and touched her arm. "You cannot undo it. You can only move forward. That is the hardest part." She nodded, but I could see in her eyes that the temptation still burned. For the next week, I lived in fear. Every buzz of my phone, every silence between us made me wonder if she had slipped. I checked her page obsessively, afraid I would see the signs of relapse. And then it happened. One night she called me in tears. I gave them my account information, she sobbed. They promised me they could trace Damien's payments, but they stole everything I had left, my paycheck, my savings, all of it is gone. I closed my eyes, pressing the phone hard to my ear. The sound of her crying was unbearable. "Alina," I said softly, "come to me, right now." She arrived at my place with nothing but a small backpack. Her face was swollen from crying, her hands shaking. She collapsed on my couch and buried her face in her knees. "I am so stupid," she whispered again and again. I sat beside her, stroking her hair. "You are not stupid. You are hurting, and people who hurt are easy targets." That night, she slept under my roof for the first time in months. I watched her from the doorway, curled up beneath a blanket, looking for all the world like the little girl I once tucked in. My chest ached with both love and sorrow. The next morning, she asked quietly if she could stay with me for a while. I hesitated. The wounds were still raw, the trust still broken, but I nodded. Yes, for a while. Living together again was both comforting and terrifying. Some days she helped with chores, made coffee, even hummed while cleaning. Other days she stayed in bed, consumed by shame. I gave her space, reminding myself that healing is never a straight line. But then came the twist. One evening I found her in the kitchen with my purse open on the table. My wallet was in her hands. "Alina," I said sharply. She froze, guilt flooding her face. I was not, my heart sank. "Were you going to take from me again?" Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I do not know, I just panicked. I felt like I was drowning." I was not going to, but the words meant nothing. The image of her with my wallet burned too deeply. I took the purse from her and stepped back. My voice shook as I said, "You cannot do this, not again." She dropped to her knees, sobbing. "Please, Mom, do not give up on me. I am trying. I swear I am trying." I stood there, torn between fury and compassion. The daughter I loved was still inside her, but so was the desperation that made her dangerous. And in that moment, I realized the cruelest twist of all. Loving her might save her, but it might also destroy me. I could not sleep that night. The image of Alina holding my wallet haunted me in the dark. My mind replayed it again and again, the guilt on her face, the tremble in her hands. I had invited her back into my home, believing she was ready to change. And maybe part of her was, but another part was still chained to the desperation Damien had planted in her. At dawn, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the steam rising from my coffee. Alina shuffled in, her hair messy, her eyes swollen from crying. She sat across from me, silent at first, then whispered, "I hate myself." I looked at her carefully. "Hating yourself will not heal you, it will only keep you trapped." She buried her face in her hands. "Then what do?" I sighed. "You make choices, every day, small ones. You stop reaching for shortcuts. You stop lying to me and to yourself. You work, you eat, you sleep, you keep going. That is the only way forward." Her tears dripped onto the table. For a long time, neither of us spoke. That day, she did not leave her room. I heard her moving around, opening drawers, pacing. In the evening, she came out holding a small box. She placed it on the table between us. Inside were the few things she had left from Damien's world. A cheap watch he sold as limited edition, a notebook filled with slogans, and a photo of herself posing in front of that rented sports car. "I want to burn it," she said. We walked outside together and found an empty patch behind the building. She set the box down, struck a match, and watched the flames rise. Her face glowed orange as the fire consumed the lies she once worshipped. She stood silently until the ashes crumbled. Then she whispered, "Goodbye." It should have felt like closure, but I knew better. Burning a box does not burn away addiction. It does not erase betrayal. But it was something. A step. The weeks that followed were uneven. Some days she surprised me. She came home from the bakery smiling, proud that a customer had praised her bread. Other days she collapsed onto the couch, declaring that she would never escape the weight of her mistakes. I learned to hold her lightly, to celebrate her good days and endure her bad ones without expecting miracles. But deep down, a question gnawed at me. Could I ever truly trust her again? Could I let my guard down around someone who once wished me gone, who had stolen from me, who had nearly done it again? The answer came one evening when I returned from work. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. My purse sat untouched on the table, but a note lay beside it. The handwriting was shaky. "Mom, I cannot keep hurting you. I love you, but I am afraid of myself. I am leaving for a while. I need to learn how to live without falling back into the same hole. Do not look for me. When I am ready, I will come back. My knees buckled. I sank into the chair, the paper trembling in my hands. Tears blurred the words, but I kept reading them again and again as if they might change. I wanted to run into the night, to search every street until I found her, but I forced myself to stay still. Because maybe, for the first time, she was making the right choice. Not by clinging to me, not by demanding money, but by stepping away to face her own shadows. I folded the note carefully and placed it in my drawer. The days since then have been quiet. I go to work, I cook for one, I water the plants by my window. At times the silence feels unbearable, but at other times it feels like peace. I do not know where Alina is. Maybe she is still in the city. Maybe she has gone far away. What I do know is that she is walking a path that only she can walk, and I am walking mine. Sometimes I dream of her, standing in a field no longer covered in ashes but in new grass. She is holding that same seed from before, but this time she plants it. She looks at me and smiles, not the forced smile of a girl chasing lies, but the gentle smile of a woman learning to live again. I wake from those dreams with tears, but also with hope, because love is not about chaining someone to you. It is about letting them find their own ground, even if it means letting them go. Alina broke me, then life broke her, but maybe breaking is not the end. Maybe it is the place where something new can grow. And if the day ever comes when she knocks on my door again, I will open it. Not with blind trust, not with old illusions, but with the cautious hope that both of us in our own ways have learned how to rise. Until then, I carry on. Stronger, wiser, still a mother, always a mother.